The real feast is not to eat, but to consume Christ's body and blood. The real feast is not to reinforce our nothingness, but to reinforce the divine image in us. The real joy, the real accomplishment is not to thicken our bodies and our skins. Do we really need another layer of skin because we have failed the test of another fast? The way Adam and Eve have failed the test of fasting in Eden, and they were given their layers of skin. The real achievement, spiritual achievement, is not to thicken our bodies and our skins, but to thicken, to strengthen the divine image in us. As we fast, we leave behind the world in us. As we fast, we weaken the roots that nothingness has grown in us. As we fast, we strengthen the roots of the divine image in us. Hello, my dear one. It's almost midnight, and I am tired, but tomorrow is going to be a very difficult day. It's also the feast of St. John Chrysostom, so we shall celebrate the services and divine liturgy, and then we have to travel from Kilninian to the pilgrimage house where the sisters are. It will just be a mad day, and I don't want to be in a rush when I record this video. So here it is in the middle of the night, trying to keep myself warm with a nice sweater and a cup of warm tea. I have read your comments, and I've seen that a lot of you are asking about the rules of fasting, the very simple rules of fasting. What to eat, what not to eat, when, how many times, and so on. And I have heard you. And towards the end of this video, I'll tell you how I will deal with those questions and those comments. However, you know how sometimes, you must know, especially if you have children, sometimes children or teenagers, they just see something and all of a sudden their eyes sparkle and they just want it. They want it then and there. And sometimes it's just not advisable to give that thing to them, like a boat. If your child sees a boat and he or she decides, oh, that's so exciting, I want a boat, give me a boat now. I don't think it's a sign of good parenting to just buy them a boat and wave them goodbye as they start sailing the ocean. Unless, of course, you want to get rid of your children, which probably is understandable during the pandemic. But anyway, back on track. The way to deal with that would be to show them the boat, send them somewhere to do a course of sorts where they learn what the boat is made of, how it is built, how to operate the boat. Only then it's advisable to give them the actual boat. I feel I'm in pretty much the same situation now with you, where all you want to do is get the rules and then start applying them. But the risk is that, and I have seen this many times in myself, so I know this is a real risk. The risk is that you are going to behave like, you know how we behave after New Year's Eve or after New Year, when everybody decides that they are going to lose weight or be extremely healthy and go to the gym every day, and you do it for a few days or for a week, and then you kind of just decide that your previous decision was not very wise or really not realistic. What I'm trying to say is that those rules in and by themselves are not going to serve you in any way. What will serve you is to understand what fasting does and why fasting is necessary. What will help you really is to understand that fasting from food is to fast from communion with our own nothingness. If you think of your food as nothingness, because it is really nothingness. It is made of nothing. It doesn't matter how colorful it is or how tasty it is. It doesn't matter how posh it is being cooked and so on. It still is nothingness. If you understand and you relate to your food as nothing feeding nothing, nothingness feeding another nothingness, our bodies, matter feeding our matter, if you perceive the act of feeding yourself as a necessary thing in order to keep your body functional and alive, but at the same time as an act of communion with our nothingness, with this matter, with this world, then fasting will make sense to you. It will be worth fighting for. Now, when we decide not to fast, or when we decide to overindulge in food of any kind, it is in fact an act of reinforcing our nothingness, of strengthening this communion of ours with the nothingness out of which we have been created. And that is an important thing to understand and to remember again and again. There are countless stories in the ladder of St. John, in the Desert Fathers, in any of the lives of the saints. If you read carefully, there are countless stories about the way in which they related to food. They cry while they eat because they perceive the act of feeding their bodies as an act of communing with the death of this world. And they perceive fasting almost like an act of walking into the desert, leaving the world behind. Because what is the world? This body of ours. What is the difference between the world and this body of ours? This body and the world and the food we are eating are all made of the same matter, are all the same dust, the same nothingness. If you understand, if you begin to understand food and the process, the act of eating, as communion with our nothingness and a sort of a building up a wall between us and the image of God in which we have been created, then fasting all of a sudden begins to make spiritual sense. If you begin to see food and the act of abstaining from food as the same thing that a monastic does when he or she leaves the world and joins a monastery in order to leave the world behind. If you see fasting as putting distance between you and the world, then fasting will just grow much stronger roots in you. And once those roots have grown deep down in you, then you can have a look at the rules, and then you can start trying to apply those rules, because then you really have a chance to follow them and to benefit from them. But without this understanding, just looking at the rules and trying to apply them, you are just like a child who sees a toy or a boat and wants to go sailing that very instant. That never, ever ends up well. There is a beautiful, spiritually speaking, a beautiful story about Saint Donan of Egg. Egg is one of the so-called small isles, not very far from the Isle of Mull. Saint Donan, and I think 50-something, 52 or 53 of his monastics were attacked on their island, in their monastery, by a group of pirates. And those pirates did not kill them because they were in church, they were celebrating divine liturgy. There is a story that actually claims that the attack took place on the eve of Pascha. So they waited outside for the saint and the entire monastery to finish their service. Once they finished their service, and after they communed with Christ's body and his blood, Saint Donan said to his monastics, "Brothers, Let us now go in the trapeza, in the refectory, you call it in English, so that we can die according to our bodies in the place where we have lived according to our bodies. Let our bodies turn back to the dust they are made of in the place where they have fed themselves, the bodies, with that nothingness. Because as long as we are in church, receiving and feeding ourselves with Christ's body and his blood, eternal life is ours and death cannot touch us. I love this clear distinction, this perfect discernment between the need to feed one's body, because one's body is an absolutely necessary and wonderful tool in our spiritual struggles, but at the same time keeping that understanding balanced with the awareness and the humility of being one, our bodies being one with the food that they feed with. As long as we feed ourselves with Christ's body and his blood, as long as we are in the church where we have fed the divine image in us, we cannot die. In order for us to die, we need to go into the refectory, in the place where we have fed the nothingness in us. Someone like that would never question the importance or the necessity of fasting. And it's someone like that that I want to be, and I pray that you will become as well. The real feast is not to eat, but to consume Christ's body and blood. The real feast is not to reinforce our nothingness, but to reinforce the divine image in us. The real joy, the real accomplishment is not to thicken our bodies and our skins. Do we really need another layer of skin because we have failed the test of another fast? The way Adam and Eve have failed the test of fasting in Eden, and they were given their layers of skin. The real achievement, spiritual achievement, is not to thicken our bodies and our skins, but to thicken, to strengthen the divine image in us. As we fast, we leave behind the world in us. As we fast, we weaken the roots that nothingness has grown in us. As we fast, we strengthen the roots of the divine image in us. Nobody questions the need, the necessity of food. This is not about saying that one has to never eat. This is about balancing the necessity of a body that needs food in order to function, and what is, in fact, strengthening a passion, strengthening the roots of the matter, of the nothing, of that food and of our flesh in ourselves. Now, a real danger and a real problem is that, especially in the West, even among Orthodox Christians, there is a very unhealthy understanding of our bodies and the worth of our bodies. There's this false humility that makes us think that our bodies somehow are worthless, that there's no use of them, as if God somehow made a mistake when he created us in a body. And this is something I want to address in the next video. After we've discussed that, after we understand, one, what is fasting, and that is what we've approached in this video, and two, the importance, the essential importance of our bodies, the beautiful, amazing value, worth of our bodies, once we have these two understandings, these two instruments in our possession, then we can discuss about the rules of fasting as well. But for those of you who are impatient, and I'm looking at you as you are clicking that link, I have included a link in the description of this video, just underneath the video. The same description where I also tell you how you can support this monastery if you are so inclined and if you are able to do. So go ahead, just read those rules, and let me know what you think of them, what strikes you most, what troubles you most, and so on. So that I can then, when I do engage with the rules, I can actually engage with them in a way that is useful practically to you. But please understand that first you need to know how to use a boat before you go out into the ocean. May God bless you, dear ones. May God bless you beyond your wildest, most beautiful hopes. Amen. Amen. Amen.